Lee, how are you today?
I'm great, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for reaching out and following up on Twitter and having this correspondence already on social media. You say you're not tech savvy, but you've been hitting me up with the DMs and the tweets and the mentions, and I'm getting likes and follow backs already. And we haven't even sat down for one question yet in the interview.
I just want to say my pleasure is to uplift people, to help people out. I've told a lot of my state toys, whatever you're doing in your states or territory, put it on social media so I can share it and I can show all the incredible things that we are all doing for our kiddos in our respective states, territories, and jurisdictions. And I just like uplifting people. So when Anthony from Virginia, and Anthony, big shout out to you, my friend.
Shout out
Got
to Anthony
said,
Swan.
yeah, that's my boy right there. He said, I'm going to hook you up with this guy, do this podcast. And then I just saw all these amazing state teachers of the year you had on. I was just like, man, I'm honored. I'm honored that out of all the state teachers, you thought of me. So I appreciate you. So I just always try to take the love that people show me and the appreciation and give it back to you. So yeah, man, I've been hyped about this all week, man. I've been so excited. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lee, for those words. I really appreciate that. And you say you're honored, man. I'm lucky. I watched one of your interviews and you said winning state teacher of the year felt like winning the lottery.
It was, it was just, I kind of, they did an interview process. They surprise you. It's just, I just remember my principal came to my room and he's like, we need everybody in the library. And I kind of knew. And, I walked in, I see all these cameras and I'm just like thinking like, okay, I got to like maybe crack a joke. So I cracked a joke about, hey kiddos, how does my hair look? It's just like, I'm thinking, where's that big old check that has all those zeros at the end? But no, it was a blessing. So I'm the first male Latino ESL teacher in the history of Nebraska to win State Teacher of the Year.
Both.
And yes.
First male Latino teacher. Yes. And also English is a second language?
English is a second language. They've never had an ESL teacher, yes.
All right, they're both historic. We love both of them.
Yeah,
which one has meant more to you so far as the titles?
Kind of both. When I go around and do my workshops and do my speaking engagements with like universities and professional organizations around the state, I just noticed that when I do these things, a lot of people don't know a lot about ESL and they don't know a lot about how language works and how to work with, English language learners. We call them Ls in classrooms. And so when I give my speeches and my professional developments and my engagements, a lot of times people will come up to me after, or they'll email me and they'll say, I never really looked at language that way, or I never really looked at culture that way, or I never really looked at kids that come from different countries in that aspect. Because a lot of times we think that language and culture are different. They're not. They're the same thing. Language is culture and culture is language. So one of the things I do when I give my workshops, I always want to give people that perspective. So what I do is I put these things up. This is an idea from my wife. My wife, Mariana Cruz, I love you. She's been so supportive. I put these things up in like a different language, like Russian or Arabic. And I ask for a volunteer to come up and I say, read that. And they say, I can't read it. And I go, well, now you know what it's like to be a language learner. Yeah. So when our kiddos come over from these different countries and they sit in our classrooms, that's what English looks like. And I always tell them they can't read that yet. And I say yet. And they're like, wow, I never looked at it like that. I go, now you do. I just taught you perspective. So when you get English language learners in your classrooms, and you will, think of what that exercise I just did with you. So it's an honor because I get to go around and talk about what I love and what I'm passionate about. And I get to advocate for my English language learners, their families, and their communities.
This is such a huge award.
Yeah.
Nebraska State Teacher of the Year. It's a historic accomplishment as well. English is a second language. You don't speak all the same languages as these students. You've already said Russian, and I've seen some of the kids who are from war-torn countries and from all over the world.
Yes.
How do you use teaching? How do you use education as that language to communicate with your students?
Well, one of the big, and I'm glad you asked that question. One of the big myths with English as a second language is a lot of people will come up to me and say, well, do you speak all these languages or do you have to know all these languages? And the answer to that is no. to be an ESL teacher, you don't have to be bilingual or multilingual. It does help, but you don't have to, because at the end of the day, you're teaching them English. But back to like the kids that come from war-torn countries, it just makes my job and the education system here in America's job more critical and important. You know, for example, with what's going on in Afghanistan, with the political destabilization and the transition of governments with the Taliban, you know, we're seeing a large number of Afghan families and refugees coming into the United States. Right. And specifically within the metropolitan area where I live, a lot of these families are getting ready to be placed in schools. And I always tell students who are in education teachers college and people that are doing student teaching that you will have these students in your classroom. They will be in math, they will be in science, they will be in social studies, they will be in English language arts. And the thing is, my job is to educate them on how language works and to give them strategies on how to work with our English language learners. Because at the end of the day, these families are so hardworking. Their stories of just resiliency and just straight up not quitting and doing what it takes to do what's best for their families is just, it's incredible. It inspires me. As much as I teach my students, they're teaching me things every day, not just to be a better teacher, but a better human being. And I think sometimes that's more important, to be a better human being. Because if you're a good, humble, tolerant, culturally relevant human being, you're going to be an amazing teacher.
It's been a really long 2 years during this pandemic. And we were talking about technical difficulties and Zooms and being tech savvy a little bit earlier before this interview. And I know you saw some of them for maybe a year, depends on however many months you guys were virtual. What have they taught you over these last 2 years, especially during the pandemic?
They've taught me love, man, for real. Like, it's just, I kind of get emotional thinking about it, because they have just, despite whatever circumstances they've been in their life, they come to school, they work hard, and they taught me that love conquers all. And I always tell, in one of the last speeches I gave, I said, you know, no matter what language you speak, whether it's Spanish, English, Arabic, Dari, Pashto, Konkubal,
the list goes on. Wow.
Japanese, Vietnamese, whatever language you speak, the language of love, my friend, is universal. It's a language we can all speak. It's a language we can all comprehend. And it's a language that we can all take in. And so they've taught me love, because they come here, my students come to me all the time and they say, Mr. Perez, I want to be a small business owner. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I had a student tell me one time, I want to be a dermatologist. And I said, why do you want to be a dermatologist? And she goes, I still have family back in Mexico and they have some skin issues, and I want to be able to go back and give back to them in my community. And I said, that's awesome. So just the love that they show me and the appreciation they show me, I try to reciprocate that and be their champion and their advocate in their corner to help them reach their dreams. And it's incredible, because I've seen many of my students go on to do amazing things with their lives. And I always tell them, listen, you speak 2 languages, 3 languages. I had a kid that just moved to Washington, D.C. She speaks 8 languages. Wow. And it's just, it's incredible. It's like their dreams and their aspirations are just to the roof. And honestly, it is a pleasure to be their teacher. And so when I applied for Nebraska Teacher of the Year and I won, when I go out and do my speaking engagements, I just share my love and passion for my babies, because they're why I'm here. They're why I'm Nebraska Teacher of the Year. And I'll never forget that.
You said something really interesting that I heard in another podcast interview you did called Education. In your application, you talked about how the pandemic we need to be in is a pandemic of kindness.
Yes.
So going on that note, in that notion of love, how your students taught you love, what is a pandemic of kindness going to look like? How much love are you going to put into that?
Like everything, man. And so like when I was crafting my message for Teacher of the Year, they ask you, like, because, I am the PK-12 ambassador for the state of Nebraska. So I am the spokesperson for the state of Nebraska. And they said, what is your message? And I basically said, kindness should be our new pandemic. And like a deadly virus has the ability to spread worldwide and create devastation and just horrible things, kindness has the ability to spread worldwide and do the exact opposite. So I said, kindness should be our new pandemic. And I basically challenged my colleagues in my application. I said, get outside of your comfort zone. Go out into your families and your communities and learn how to be uncomfortable, because being uncomfortable will teach you the change that you need to know to be a better educator. So I said, go to a quinceañera, celebrate Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, Vietnamese and Korean New Year. Go out to all these cultural celebrations and be open-minded. But no matter what you do and no matter who you meet along the way, like a deadly pandemic that spreads, kindness has the same ability that can be the great equalizer that brings our communities together.
I don't want people to skip over now. How did you become so culturally receptive? How are you able to communicate in these different languages? Why are you the person who's able to reach out and connect with students and educators like this? I mean, it's very powerful what you've been speaking about.
It's just, there is a language barrier. And, oftentimes when I go out, I might bring a translator, or my students might translate for me within like these communities and things. But, one of the things I always preach as an ESL teacher is I always tell my kiddos, never, ever forget where you came from. So like, for example, like we live in very polarizing times, and a lot of people have like English only initiatives. And I understand English is the most predominantly spoken language, but there is no official language in this country. And even the founders of this country actually had this debate back, before the founding of the country. And they actually decided that monolingualism was not the way to go forward with this country, because many of our documents that were drafted were actually drafted in different languages. And many of the founders of this country were actually bilingual and multilinguals. And so when you look at the history of this country, monolingualism wasn't really the linguistic objective of the United States of America. So I always tell these kiddos, like, please remember what your native language is. So I always try to bring in bilingual and multilingual teaching strategies into my classroom, because the linguistic research shows that your native language can help support your acquisition of a second language. So, sometimes I rely on translator apps, on phones and stuff like that. But no, it's great. You go out and they'll teach you how to say hi and good morning in their language. And the food, man, going out to these things, man, the food is just, it's amazing. It's just, I tell you what, when you go to these places, I always tell the college students I speak to, come hungry, like literally fast before you go, because they just feed you, and it's awesome. It's awesome.
So one of the secrets of being the teacher of the year is coming with a huge appetite.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing. I always tell educators and future educators, some of the best learning that has ever happened in my life hasn't happened in the classroom. It's happened in the community. It's happened when I've went to celebrate birthdays with a family from Thailand, or went to a quinceañera. It's that cultural lens that I've been able to view over the many years of my teaching career that has just made me look at things differently. Because, a lot of times you will hear, biases and stereotypes against certain groups, certain cultural groups. And then when you actually go and you visit, you sit down at the table and you have a meal with these families, you find out that everything that you heard was completely false. And so I always try to tell people, like, one way to educate yourself on implicit bias is go into the community and experience it for yourself. And I've had people come back and say, man, I went to a quinceañera and that was awesome. I told you. And they're like, you were right, go hungry.
Lee, how did you even get your start in education? And I know you can go in a couple different, directions with this, but start with your parents. Your father immigrated from northern Mexico,
Yes.
And you are one of 5 boys that your parents had?
Correct. Yeah, it's a big family. So my mom actually thought I was a girl. I thought that was kind of funny. But no, so I'm biracial. So my mom is, her family's immigrants come from Ireland and Scotland and Germany primarily. My father's side is from Mexico, and my father's immigration journey kind of here was tough. And I don't really know the full story. I'm kind of like the historian in my family. I'm always like digging deeper and trying to find out exactly where my family came from and why. And so The first week of January when I came back, I tested positive for COVID-19. And so me and my wife had to isolate. And I remember talking to one of my cousins back in one of my hometowns, and I was just asking him questions, and we did a video chat. And I came to discover that, one of my great grandmas, her name is Great Grandma Gomez, she actually lived to be 104.
Okay, grandma.
And yeah, that is a great grandma. And she was just an incredible woman. She literally just at the age, I think you said at like the age of 14 or 15, just hopped on a train. Didn't know where she was going, just got on a train and just said, okay, we're taking you here. Had no idea where she was going. So my family ended up settling in San Marcos, Texas. And my family did a lot of things. They harvested potatoes. My uncle told me they actually harvested cotton at some times. And so then they moved further north and they settled in Wellington, Kansas. And then they moved further north and they settled in North Platte. And according to my cousin, my grandma and her family literally did migrant field work. So like they literally did, they worked in a field outside of a town called Hershey, Nebraska. And from sun up to sundown with the machete, they literally cut beets, and they literally did that hard back-breaking work that was repetitive. And I didn't know that.
It seems like you really came from the struggle.
Yeah, it was a struggle. And, growing up, my dad and his family faced, a lot of racism, a lot of discrimination. It was during the 1950s. It was kind of my dad used to tell me stories where, when they would go into classrooms, like they didn't have any Hispanic or Latino teachers. So like kids would all be speaking Spanish. And as soon as the teacher came in, they automatically had to code switch and go to English. And he said that if kids were taught speaking Spanish, they would hit their knuckles, they would give them bloody knuckles, they would hit them. And so, yeah, my dad and his family kind of, grew up with a lot of trauma, and, it's just like when I tell these kids, like, trying to tell someone not to speak their language is like, it's like trying to like take their identity away. You know what I'm saying? And it's wrong. And so I always tell my kids, like, if you want to speak your native language during lunch or during recess, do that. During a brain break in my classroom, if you want to speak Spanish, go ahead. Don't ever forget and lots of times I do work in my classroom where kids are using their native language. I'll say it in English. Now say it in your native language. So I'm always trying to be linguistically and culturally respectful to the plethora of cultures that I have in my classroom.
What does that mean for you to come full circle and to be, a Latinx individual talking in the classroom, educating minority students and students who are from everywhere across the globe?
Yeah, I mean, it's empowering. I mean, one of my objectives as Teacher of the Year is to increase more teachers of color, because representation matters. Because, it's kind of like one of those things, like I always give people the analogy, if you're a new kid at school, what's the first thing you do when you come into school? You look for people that look like you. You know what I'm saying? You look for people that speak the same language. And I use that analogy because it's the same as teaching. A lot of times our kiddos, the teaching workforce phenotypically does not mirror what our student body looks like. So when I go out and I give my speeches and I give my engagements, I always say, hey, we have a diverse student body. And if you are a teacher of color, your influence in the classroom will matter more than you know. Because like I said, our student bodies are getting very, very culturally diverse. And we need a teaching staff that looks like our students. And not just in teaching, just in administration too. Just in education overall. And that's what I love about the 2022 State Teacher of the Year class. It is a very diverse class of teachers. I mean, when you look at the 4 finalists, it is a very diverse group. There are 3 people of color, and I love that. I love that. That's America. You know what I mean? That's what America looks like, and that's what education should look like. So that is to be my mission going forward. And I'm glad I have a bunch of state toys that look like me, that want to accomplish and achieve the same objective as I do.
Lee, thank you so much for pointing out, the State Teachers of the Year for 2022 and how diverse they are. You're one of a few that I've already had on this show, and I hope to have more on this show. And also the National Teacher of the Year finalists, like you said, 3 are people of color.
Yes.
Something that's really important in your specific platform, bringing in more diverse teachers, diversifying the education workforce. That is such an important point to have as your platform. But I'm going to take it one step further. For the teachers who are already in the workforce, who are Latinx, Black, Asian, minority races of all kinds, how do we retain these minority teachers in education, especially during the pandemic?
And that's the thing. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I always tell people I was actually on a national committee with the National Education Association, and it was literally a teacher of color cohort. And we met for over a year, and I met with educators from all over the United States. And that was literally our guiding question: is it's not the recruitment piece that is the difficult part. It is keeping them in the field. And all I can say is I'm working on initiatives right now, both locally, statewide, and federally, to set up like mentorship programs where people of color can mentor people of color in the field. And that's just one step. But it's just right now with the teacher shortage, it's just that, that question is, truthfully, it's kind of hard to answer, because it's just like, right now things are struggling. But one of the initiatives I'm trying to work on is trying to set up a cohort of mentorship where it is run by teachers of color to support teachers of color in the field. And for example, I went to a speaking engagement at a local university in Omaha. And when I told my story, I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college, and when I told my story about my immigration story, and I'm the first person to graduate from my college, I had a young lady come up who is bilingual, who is Latina, who is from Mexico. And she said, if I graduate, I'll be the first in my family to graduate from college. I could empathize with many of your struggles. And right now I'm trying to get her as my student teacher, but she's a person of color, but she's a person I want to mentor and get her in the system. But not only that, I said, I'm here to support you in any way, because I want to keep a good person of color like you in the classroom, because you look like many of our kiddos and you can empathize with many of our kiddos. And so I'm working on that right now. But I said, no matter what happens, I am a support system. So if you are a teacher of color out there, just know that Mr. Perez in Nebraska and a lot of other state toys around there that are people of color, we are here as a support system for you.
Thank you so much for that call to action, Lee, and being so impactful with how you're going to use your platform as State Teacher of the Year. 2022 Nebraska State Teacher of the Year, the first male Latino ESL Teacher of the Year in the state. Thank you so much for coming on, Lee. Is there anything else that you want to leave with us?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for having me. Please reach out to other state toys. I actually talked to Willie from Kentucky last night on the phone. We talked for an hour. It was awesome. And, there's so many good state toys out there right now. So please get a hold of them. I'm actually getting ready to do a Zoom next week with Autumn, the state toy from Colorado, who is a finalist for National Teacher of the Year. So yeah, you got a very, very diverse group of just incredible educators that just, like I said, we just got done doing our orientation this week, and it was just surreal. It was one of the best professional developments I have ever done in my life. I cannot wait to meet these people in person. But I just want to say thank you very much. And I just want to say, I know education's tough out there right now, but please, please, please stay away from the toxic negativity. Please stay away from social media. Find people that inspire and empower you, and be around those people. Because again, at the end of the day, the more you hang out with toxic negativity, the more appropriate that toxic negativity will become. Peace, y'all. I love y'all. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. And thank you for inspiring diverse voices in education and diversifying the education workforce. I really appreciate you for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.